recommendation, here are the alternatives, here are the pros, here are the cons, here is the discussion we have had from our governance committees about it. Now make a decision. That process, I think, would be better for the President and better for the board, because I think we would have a greater depth of understanding of some very significant policy decisions that the board has faced and still faces.
First of all, the superintendent-president clearly is the employee of the board. Those of you who participated in the selection process know that all segments of the community and all segments of the college took part in it. We made the best choice we could. Peter, I will take issue with what you said about the board not having adequately guided the president. Unless you were there, and I know you weren't, you have no idea of what takes place in the sessions where we evaluate the president and discuss performance. We have been diligent in that respect. I really don't think that your comment is supportable or justified. With respect to decision-making, you have to understand that decisions and recommendations don't come to us purely from the superintendent-president. They come up through departments, divisions, the academic senate, the curriculum committee. They're not decisions which are presented to us as a novelty on a first-come basis. They have been thoroughly digested in the college process. And when we get a recommendation and a program, we're probably not going to second-guess it because we know it has gone through the adequate processes of the college. Thank you.
I was told by one of the trustees that he's worked for 6 college presidents here at City College, and I just made sure in my mind to say, no, you haven't. 6 college presidents have worked for you, because what it is, the organizational chart is very clear. It's the people, the voters, then the trustees who hire the president, and then the president is beholden to the trustees. And the president has to run a good city college. So that's the way that works. I think if you have a very strong board, a board that is supportive, a board that asks good questions, you will have a stronger president. And that's what I would be working on. I think that the trustees' role in this is it is interesting that when you mention talking to various people on the staff, you are told, no, you can't do that because that would be micromanaging. But on the other hand, how do you get the information if you don't talk to people? So I think in my 14 years in elected office in the city, I was never told I was micromanaging anything. I think it was very important for me to go out and talk to the staff and see what was happening. And so that is the role of the trustees, to make sure they know what's happening on the campus and make sure that the president has all the information she or he needs.
I call Dr. Serban the boss, and no one else does. We hired her, you know, and we did a good job of doing that. She's one of the best presidents that's ever served this community. And I can say that having served under, did you say 6? I kind of lost count. Anyway, having worked with all those good people, certainly like John Romo and certainly like Peter McDougall, she is the best. She listens. She does so much shared governance, all the people, the faculty, the students, the staff. She doesn't come to us just with one recommendation without having gone through all this issue. I mean, she has been the best, without a question. I think where the trustee's role is to work with her, and most of it spent hours with her this year, because there's been a lot of issues. 2 main ones, as you know, we spent hours on this. So it's not to say that she doesn't listen and we don't listen. We try to do the best we can, and we really do. And I think that the college is in a better place right now because of the administration and Dr. Serban.
Well, I believe we're all in agreement who works for who. And, you know, yes, the role of the trustees is to advise and support the superintendent and president. I'd have to disagree that we need to assume all the questions have been asked when something comes to the trustees, though, from the president. I think it is always, always, in every circumstance, the role of the trustees to ask more questions, to make sure that things have been considered in depth. And as Marty said, to kind of have your ear to the ground and listen to people and what they're saying, just to make sure that you're not getting a narrow perspective. So that's how I would see my role in interacting with the superintendent president. Well, I highly respect that position and would like to encourage that position. I would also need to ask questions when things came up and make sure I had all the information I needed to make correct decisions. Thank you.
I noticed that this question came up from the audience, and so I think I'll pitch an answer to the audience. Being asked to be the superintendent president of the college is being asked to take on one of the hardest jobs there is. It's a killer. It's a killer job. And that's one of the reasons we've lost presidents in the past. They've come, they've done a good job. Gooder left because it killed him off. McDougal left because it killed him off. Roma left because it killed him off. So if you want to know how this place works, that's the truth. But so I think the trustees have to realize that they asked somebody to take on a killer job, and I think what they have to do is do everything in their power to make that person successful, introduce them to that community, introduce them to that culture, introduce them to the people that are there. And I would say that's what I think the incumbents have tried to do. And if it has appeared to you out there otherwise, I regret it, because I think very good things have been set up here. And we want the relationship to be profitable for the college and for the community.
Here's a second interesting question from the audience, unedited. What are the pros and cons of implementing term limits for the trustees? And I'm going to add to that, feel free to comment on whether you would oppose term limits for the Board of Trustees. But the question was, what are the pros and cons? I'll add, do you favor or oppose term limits? And this time we'll begin with Trustee Area 3, followed by 4, and ending with 1. Marcia.
Well, I think there is value to term limits, and there are some cons as well. I think term limits encourage new ideas, fresh energy, new perspective. I think that's one of the clear issues in this election, that people feel that it's time for some fresh blood on the board in order to get a fresh perspective on the problems, and we have some pretty serious problems facing us. The old ways of approaching them don't seem to be working as well. We touched on that earlier, the perception that the existing structure of the board is not functioning as well as it might in order to address these problems. I think term limits help that. I think perhaps some of the cons are that institutional memory, but the institutional memory is in this institution. We have faculty who have been here for many years, like Peter. We have staff who have been here for many years, and I think that they are all part of that process. We also have a staggered election. We don't change everybody at the same time. We have 3 remaining board members with a collective 40 years experience. So all in all, I do think that it is a good thing for the voters to have that opportunity to have an election and make choices about adding new.
Term limits is sort of an academic question because we don't have them. Obviously, for those of us who have been on the board for a while, we would be inclined not to favor them. I don't think that would be a great surprise. I think over the years, those of us who have been on the board have acquired a great deal of experience. We have had our successes and our failures. We have done well in managing the college. We think we've done a good job, and there's a great deal of experience behind what we do. Institutional memory, collegial decision-making, these are things that the Accreditation Commission commended us on, and things which are remarkably absent from a lot of community college boards in the state. I don't know whether you follow that, but the average longevity on community college boards is 7 years. Most of them are in turmoil half the time because of political ambitions by board members. We've never had that. We've got a solid board that works together and works to make this college better. Thank you.
You asked pros and cons of
Pros and
term
cons,
limits.
and your opinion on term limits.
Well, if there hadn't been term limits, I probably wouldn't have been mayor, because Harriet Miller would have kept going. She was wonderful. So 2 terms on the city council and 2 terms as mayor, and I needed to move on, and I was fine with that. We have a wonderful new mayor. I think term limits give opportunities to some people in the community who might not have had those opportunities. I think 100 years, the incumbents here have 100 years of service on this board, and that's over 100 years, and that's a lot. So I really want to thank them and move on. So that's all I know.
Those of you in the audience that remember Eli Luria, who was such a benefactor and a long-term board member, 38 years, would you turn him out just because he had longevity? I don't think so. I don't think so. This institutional memory, you can't take that away from the board. That's real important. You cannot do that. I think that this board has an obligation to the college. I have no objections to term limits. It's not our decision. It's not, we can't decide, let's have term limits. But I do know, and you can ask Sally Green, it takes many years to learn the system, if you will. Many years. You can ask any trustee. The reason trustees leave boards is not because they're having problems, because there's usually 1 or 2 trustees that are troublemakers. They knock everything down. And so if you have a balanced board where you work together as a team, they like to serve, because we're not the longest serving board. There's one that has an average of 24.1 years, because they have many people that serve, because I think they feel they're doing a good job. They can make a difference, so they continue to serve. It takes a lot of time, but they are willing to serve.
Lisa?
Lisa?
Sure. We live in a democracy, and here's our opportunity to enact that. You know, we're all on the ballot this time around. I do believe in term limits. I believe a board can get stagnant if it just stays on year after year, especially in these times when the world is changing so much. You know, I was telling my friends, my 9-year-old took an MP4 player out and in minutes had downloaded all the songs off my teenager's iTunes. You know, things that are happening now are so different than 40 years ago, 30, 20 years ago, and I think the board needs to have some refreshing periodically and get some new ideas in. So I am totally in favor of term limits. In terms of institutional memory, if I was to win this spot on this board, I would hope that all of the trustees would be available to us and with their institutional memory to support us. And as we've already mentioned, Peter already has 40 years of institutional memory with this college. You know, the institutional memory is available in places other than on the Board of Trustees.
Don't say that.
Obviously, I have an opinion on this. And you know what it is, so I'm not going to go into it. But I thought I would give you an anecdote that you would find interesting. I originally was on the charter board because I was recruited along with Jim Garvin from Montecito and Ben Wells from Goleta. The 3 of us were recruited because we served on elementary boards. And the theory was that if we had people on that original board that had board experience, that it would be useful. And you know, at the time, I was in a room giving this pitch was being given to me. There were 8 people in the room. The only person I recognized was Sam Wake. Elwood Shapansky was there. He was only 22 years old, and he said he was pretty surprised that he was being sent out to try to get a trustee. But it's true. Board experience counts and helps, and we build up our ideas of how we run the boards by talking to other boards in the state and reading the stuff that they send to us and discussing it. And so I have as I say, a personal opinion, but I also have a honed opinion on the fact that this board has taken their trustee responsibilities seriously, and if reelected, will continue to do so.